The act of painting with watercolors is not only enjoyable, but also provides a calming escape that can reduce stress and inspire creativity. So go grab your watercolor supplies and let's make a splash of some bright colors today. I truly think you're going to love trying out this beautiful flower watercolor painting. So besides watercolor paper and paints and a paper towel, we also need some clean water and a little outline drawing on our paper. Now, because this drawing is a little bit more complicated, I have actually created an outline already for you to use in my Etsy shop that you can simply trace onto your watercolor paper using a light table or even just a well-lit window in your house. And because I didn't take the time to show how to draw it, and because I want you to give it a try, I will also be putting this outline on a 20% discount for 1 week. I'll go ahead and tape my paper down really quickly with some artist tape, and then we're ready to get started. And as a side note, all of the supplies you see me using today will be listed with information and links in the description of this video if you're interested. Then for our brushes, we need a few different ones today, maybe a number 10 round brush, a number 6 round, and a number 1 rigger. Now, there are a couple of ways to go about this painting. We're going to be painting a really pretty, bright, and splashy background around the 2 main flowers. So if it helps, you can use a little bit of masking fluid and mask off the flowers, and it might make that process a little bit easier. I don't think I'm going to worry about it today. I think I'll just be a little bit more careful and simply paint around the flowers instead, but the choice is up to you. Now, we will be using a fairly limited color palette today. Let's start with some colors for the background. I have here some phthalo blue for a nice bright blue, and then some ultramarine blue for the darker shadow blue. I'm keeping these colors fairly concentrated as well. So using the number 6 round, I'll start by taking just a little bit of clean water and painting it in the first section of the background splashes. This is going to help the colors spread and flow in a more loose and fun way. Then after the water is on here, I'll take some of the phthalo blue and start placing it in here, painting it at the closest point to the flowers, and then letting it spread out the rest of the way. Now, while that color is still wet, let's take some of the darker ultramarine blue and add that in, again placing it right against the flowers, but this time I'll kind of just let it bleed and spread a little bit more on its own. I'm not going to take this darker color clear to the edges because I want that phthalo blue to still show through at those outer edges. At this point, I'll just keep placing in the color around the background area in the same way, just focusing on one little section at a time. And keep in mind, you may need to work a little bit more quickly on the larger areas so that the paint and water doesn't start to dry out too quickly. Okay, that looks great. A really good start here. Now to finish off the background area, we just need to add in some splatter marks. Before we have fun splashing the color on, I do have a few larger, more thought out splatter circles that I will just paint on here too. These are just a little bit more controlled and a little bit more thought out as far as composition goes. I will probably use a little bit of both of the blue colors. Maybe I'll start with some of the phthalo blue ones first and then move on to the darker ultramarine blue. I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. This is going to be a fun and bright piece in the end. I think you're really going to like it. If you are enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. All right, now that those larger dot marks are placed, we can have some fun with some more spontaneous splatters. I'll just load up my number 6 brush with color. I'll take a scrap piece of paper and cover up my main flowers. Then I'll tap my brush against another to flip off some of that paint and create some fun little splatter marks. Again, I'll probably use both blue colors and just do them here and there around the page, and really you can do as many or as few as you'd like. Now to finish up the background, let's add in a few drip marks in here to add to the splatter fun. I'll use the rigger brush for this, take a little bit of blue paint, and just paint in some nice thin lines coming down from around the flowers. If you've used my outline to trace the drawing on here, then you'll see the indicators of where they need to go. Okay, while we let that dry a little bit, let's switch over to the number 10 round and pull out some colors for the main flowers. I'll start with a little bit of Quinacridone Rose for the base color. I'll have this one just slightly watered down so that it's a little bit lighter in value. Then for the second color, which will serve as the shadow or accent color, let's pull out a little bit of Alizarin Crimson. This one is going to be a little more concentrated. All right, now I rinsed my brush out, but it does still have some of this pink color in here, so I'll just go ahead and use some of the leftover paint or tainted water to cover the area of this first petal. Later, we are probably going to need to use some of that Quinacridone Rose on our tray to fill in this color though. Then after we have a light wash of pink color on here, and while it is still wet, I'll take a touch of the Alizarin Crimson and apply that to the inside part of the petal and let it spread out a little bit. Maybe I'll even spread some of the color out in some lines throughout the petal to create the look of veins. That looks pretty good, but I think I may want to add even a darker touch of color right at the center of the flower. So maybe I'll mix up some Dioxazine purple with some Alizarin crimson using the number 6 round for a nice dark pink purple color that I can just put a small touch of at the innermost part of the petal. At this point, I'll just continue painting in the rest of the petals in the same way. However, to keep the petals from bleeding into each other, I will be skipping every other petal until they're dry. Then I will come back in and paint in between. Now that I've got every other petal painted on this first flower, I'll just let that finish drying and start painting the petals on the second flower in the same way that we just did. At this point, the majority of the petals I've painted are fairly light in value, so I may change things up just a little bit and start adding in some petals that are more concentrated and darker in their color. I also think I'm just about ready to paint in all those petals in between the painted ones to finish this off. All right, this looks great. We are actually just about done here. Let's let those last few petals finish drying and then we'll paint in the few small petals in the center of the flower. While we wait though, let's take the number 6 round and paint in the little buds off in the corner of the page. We'll start again with some Quinacridone rose first and then add in just a touch of Alizarin crimson for the shadow color. I'll let those 2 buds dry a little bit before I add in the 3rd bud, but I think I can go ahead and paint in the smaller petals in the centers of the flowers now. I will keep these fairly light in value though, so that they stand out amongst the other petals. After I do a few of these, then I can move back and finish off that last bud. Then I can bounce back and finish off the last of the petals. We'll just be doing a bit of jumping back and forth so we can allow for some drying time in between. Okay, the very last thing we need to do is add in a few thin vein lines amongst the flower petals. I'll just pull out the rigger brush again, dip it in some of the pink color, and paint some thin lines in here and there. There doesn't need to be a lot, and they don't need to be super dark either. We just want a hint of them. And I think that's it for this painting today. It's kind of a different style of painting, but I think it's bright and happy. I'm glad that you joined me today for this. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.